Welcome to Keep It Humane, the podcast,
where we talk about animal control, shelters, and animal welfare, and the people doing the work.
With your hosts,
Ashley Bishop.
And sometimes Ashley Bishop.
And Daniel Ettinger, helping people help animals. Welcome to another episode of Keep It Humane, the podcast. It's just Texas Bishop and I, and just on a personal note, our hearts are with Wisconsin Bishop. If you're listening, you know we love you.
Yeah.
How are things?
I miss you.
How are things down there in the cold Texas?
Man, I can't take it anymore. I'm so tired of it. It was literally 80 degrees like 3 days ago, and now it's like almost below freezing. I can't do it anymore. My dogs can't do it anymore either. Shouts out to our staff who have to endure all this cold while our dog hole is not climate controlled. So there's some really good heaters though. I tell you what, our new HVAC guy is amazing. He's from New York. Shouts out Mike. But yeah, how are you? How's the weather over there? Not that I really care.
Well, yesterday I rode the motorcycle down Pacific Coast Highway.
Of course you did.
And I went to 1,000 Steps. It's 1,000 Steps Beach down there in, I think it's Laguna. And it was just absolutely phenomenal. It was gorgeous. And then there's always got to be that one guy. And it's always a guy that he has his own bag and he fills it up with sand and he goes up and down these 1,000 steps just working out. And I'm like, bro, I walked up these things with nothing and I could barely make it. And he's going up and down with this bag. So shout out to my man getting his workout in. But just, it's been a gorgeous past few days. But I will say the weather over the winter has been one of the rainiest that I can remember, not just here in California, but anywhere that I've lived. So that's that. And yeah, so just keeping busy, wondering, just how the rest of 2026 will go. Looking forward to all the amazing things that are on the horizon. So excited about that.
I know. I'm excited for just I don't know. This year, for some reason, I don't feel as weighted down.
Yeah.
For the industry. I know that's probably a little opposite for you, Dan, right now, but I'm just excited for what's to come, man. Like we had a meeting last week for a new facility that's going to be built. And I'm so humbled by being able to be part of this process with my supervisors. Like I'm sitting in a room full of very important people for our city.
Well, you are important. You better stop playing.
No,
yeah, you better stop. Yes,
no, not at all. And it's just so humbling. And I'm just so excited for this process. And I'm excited for our staff to be part of this process. Because they deserve it. Again, shouts out to Micah. I love her so much and everything that she brings to the table for our department. I'm just excited, man. And I hope this feeling continues because I know some days it can be really hard. Last year, I feel it was really hard on a lot of ends. But I'm excited.
I'm excited for you. You got some major things coming. I'm excited about today's show. People strap in. This is going to be one of our best ever. I truly believe that. But before we get into the show, I just got to ask you, what is the deal when I'm walking my dog? I don't know if this is a California thing or just all over. If you're experiencing this, just let us know. Just drop it in the show comments or shoot me an email. Why do people cross the street all the time when I'm walking my dog and they have their dog? He is nice. He just wants to say hi. He wants to sniff a butt and be like, "What's up, dude?" Like that's all he wants to do. But people always cross the street. What is it? Is it a behavioral issue? And I think we're going to kind of get into that as the show goes on today about kind of where we are in animal welfare and what dogs are in our community. But I'm just curious if you've ever experienced that, if that's something.
Sir, you and I are in the very different spectrum of dog breeds.
Yes,
as everybody knows, I have a pack of little chihuahuas in my house right now. You'll probably hear them. I got a Pickles, a Ellie, a Gibbs, and a Lulu. So I don't know. My kids don't really go outside much because they're just lazy, don't pay rent, eat, and are just happy to be alive.
Oh, I love that. All right, let's introduce our guest. I'm just so grateful we found him, and his article is absolutely outstanding. I'd like to introduce Douglas Starr, who is a professor emeritus of science journalism at Boston University. And Douglas, first and foremost, thank you for taking time to come on the show. And I just want to reference the article that I came across that's on the Smithsonian Magazine, smithsonianmag.com, called "The Nation's Biggest Animal Sanctuary Operates Under a Mantra to Save Them All." How could that be controversial? So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. And before we get into the discussion, can I comment on a couple of things you guys have been talking about?
Absolutely.
You hear people in your part of the country complain about the cold. Sitting here in Massachusetts, I just shake my head. Air is the strength of our nation.
I was in
Wisconsin Bishop always gives me crap too, so I get it.
Douglas, I was in Connecticut in November, and I had to sit in a car while it warmed up to get the frost. No way. I don't know how you do it, sir.
No, you got to know. Number two, on the question of walking your dog on the other side of the street. So I like dogs, and it must be dogs like me. They come up to me. People's dogs who are afraid of men come up to me. I know it's a smell thing. But I'm walking up my street the other day, and a neighbor with her 2 chihuahuas walks by, and one of them bites my leg for no reason. Oh. I didn't pet down. I didn't go to pet it. I actually don't pet dogs that don't belong to me. I think they don't want to be assaulted like this. And please pet me, I'll say, but I'm not. And it bites me, and I look at my leg, and it's bleeding. So I said to the owner, let's exchange information. Just want to make sure your dog doesn't have rabies, and she's a good neighbor. And she said, definitely, I'm really sad about this. To her credit, she showed up at my house a half hour later with all the information she could find.
Wow.
Apologetic. Later that week, she said, here's a complete medical record from the veterinarian. Again, I'm sorry. I said, Ann, don't worry about it. I'm just checking. She followed up a month later, and it turned out that this poor dog had a brain tumor.
Oh, no.
Oh.
And it caused it to attack the other dog. I was the first person it attacked. Wow. But it's so interesting to see a tiny little dog like that, become vicious, where I've encountered enormous dogs who were gentle. So you can never tell.
Never.
Yeah. And to my mind is somebody's walking their dog. They have their privacy. We have a dog in the neighborhood that simply loves to sit on the ivy on our front hill year round. Doesn't pee, doesn't poop, just sits there with the owner, and we chat, and she said, I don't know why he likes it here. Okay. So, dogs and cats are as individual as people. So that's how I take them. I don't assume every dog wants to be pet or shunned. It's just, so I understand people don't want to be next to your dog if they're, anyway.
Yeah, when they cry, you're right. I feel like he's lonely and wants a friend, so I'm trying to get him friends out there in the community.
Yeah.
So Douglas, I guess let's just start with your background and kind of a little bit more who you are, so our listeners know.
Sure. So I've been a science journalist for about 40 years. I ran a graduate program, and by science I mean where science intersects with society. So in the 80s, I wrote one of the early articles on the animal rights movement. I met the people who founded PETA back in the 80s. I've also written about police confession techniques, how that may or may not be psychologically valid. I've written about science. I've written about medicine. I've written 2 books about the history of medicine. One of my books was about the history of forensics and people who invented forensics. And animal welfare, every once in a while, makes its way into my field of view. And I think it's important. And when I see something interesting, I want to get into it, which is how this happened.
Yeah. So I was curious, how did this article come to you, or how did you decide to start doing the research and writing it?
I had been doing some research with a veterinarian in the Boston area who's actually a forensic veterinarian. It's like CSI for animals.
Sure. Yeah.
And in the course of researching her, I start to get acquainted with the legal community about animal rights. And somehow I caught sight of this place in Utah, 6,000 acres in big canyon country where they treat these animals. And honestly, the first thing that interested me was the science angle. The science angle is, what is the psychology of dealing with a traumatized animal? Is there a practice in the same way that people deal with PTSD, can you deal with animals that have PTSD? And that's what drew me to the story in the first place.
And I believe the veterinarian, if I'm not mistaken, if we're thinking of the same person, we've had her on the show as well.
She is an amazing person.
Yeah.
Formidable. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But I really got interested, what is the science of, and what is the practice of treating animals with PTSD?
Mm.
And that's what started this whole thing rolling.
That's interesting. And what is the time period of when you learned about best friends and kind of what their motto is?
Good point. The time period in terms of my research.
Yes.
Yes. The first thing I did was, it takes a while to get people's confidence to have you visit. So the first thing I did is I went and I visited for 3 days and I observed their techniques, which are commendable and really, really interesting. And I met dozens and dozens of people who are smart and idealistic. It's not a cult. Some people think they're cult-like. They really are doing a great job. When I came back to Boston and was looking into it, I thought, well, this is a gigantic animal sanctuary. Are there others? And I actually found a professor at Wellesley who did his PhD thesis on the history of animal sanctuary. And I started looking at that and thinking, what's the context of this? And what's the politics of this? So I would say some weeks after I came home is when I really started to understand the no-kill philosophy. Now, they spoke about it when I was there, but it was part of, okay, I'm gathering information. I get it. But then I started to reach out to see, okay, what is this about? How does it work? It seems laudable. What's the historic context of it? And that's when I found that, this wasn't a simple story. It was a nice story, but a complicated one.
And I think just their intentions are wonderful if you look at it from the surface level. There's no question.
Even below the surface level. I mean, a lot of these people are dedicating their lives to the world. When the Michael Vick dogs, Michael Vick, they were going to be euthanized. And these guys, no, we think we could take care of them. After Hurricane Katrina, they rushed down there to rescue animals. They're taking in animals from all over the place. They've established very productive networks among shelters all over the country who want to sort of trade animals to balance the load so they don't have to euthanize them. So there's a lot of good in what they do.
So as somebody who hasn't necessarily been in the animal welfare world, Douglas, what did you think about the language
Of no kill?
Yes. And how did you interpret that as somebody who didn't know anything of the history or kind of how it's used, I guess?
Okay. First of all, that's a good question, so I'm going to give you a complicated answer, which you deserve.
Okay.
When I first heard it, I thought, well, that's pretty clear. That's pretty stark. And then I thought, well, let me start calling some experts in the animal world to see if it works. Because there's all sorts of slogans we use and don't use. You're seeing signs around the country that says ice out. Whether you like them or not, that's an unmistakable message. All sorts of messages. So I thought, okay, it's an effective message. To what degree? And that's when I started encountering people who said, it basically, to sum up, at this point in history, some years ago, it really helped, but now it's getting in the way of things. So in my business, first impressions are only useful if they excite your curiosity. And that was my first impression. Not, oh, I like this, I don't like. My first impression was, let me bookmark this as something to look into. Well, that's how it works.
Okay. Well, I wish everybody did that, Douglas. I really did.
It's an amazing, let's be honest, from a marketing standpoint, it's an outstanding slogan. It is something that grabs your attention. It fuels emotion. Like, there's no question about it. I think the things that we're going to get into is what are the side effects, if you will, of that slogan. And you talk about it in your article about the terminology, basically kill shelters versus no kill shelters, because that's what it automatically does. And I wish I honestly, if I could, well, I mean, if I could go back 15 years, I'd have probably bought a couple $1,000s worth of Bitcoin, but I would have also kept kept a journal. I would have kept a journal on how many times people asked, "Are you a kill shelter?" Because it is countless, and it is it's heartbreaking for people in the industry that work their asses off to try to do the best for the community and for the animals, to have to try to defend why euthanasia may be necessary.
Yeah. And if I could insert something that kind of was made me unhappy, was I got a number of letters and some prominent people on how dare you write a puff piece about these people, that you didn't even address the negative effects of what they're doing. And that's not true. Mm-hmm. And I often find, I've written so many articles and books over the years, I often say to my colleagues, half of what people perceive from what they read is on the page, and half of what's been bouncing around inside their own head already. Mm-hmm. But I got some pretty harsh criticisms of, why did you write such a puff piece? And as you know, it wasn't. It was a complicated piece.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
even though you say, look, the no-kill thing has done its harm, what they're doing in that facility and several other facilities, and in one of the facilities in Texas, has been terrific. You know, like they say, it's possible to have two thoughts in your brain at the same time. And I'm asking readers to do that.
And you know, as somebody who's been in the industry for almost 20 years now, working in different facets of veterinary medicine, shelter medicine, academia, and things like that, I, in my personal opinion, I don't think it was a puff piece at all. Reading through it, I think you did an excellent job, and you clearly say it even right now with us. It's complicated. It's absolutely complicated. And I think that's the conversation that a lot of people, the general public, miss, is that it's complicated. It's not just one-sided. While the idea is great, you know, would I love to go into work and not worry about space and, you know, what are we going to have to do tomorrow if I get 20 dogs? Am I going to be able to fit 20 dogs in my facility? Absolutely not. We're going to have to make decisions. Whether it's reaching out to rescues, doing some kind of adoption special, or having to make that hard decision about who gets to stay or who gets to go. I think with this particular topic and animal welfare in general, it's either one way or no way. And it really hurts those of us who have been doing this for so long, who have seen the industry really progress until something happened, whatever that could have been. And now we're here at a point where we're struggling again.
Do you, as a professional, have you had interactions or business with best friends?
I have. And they've been nothing but cordial, and, you know, they've given us ideas and everything like that. I've seen their work in progress. Do I agree with a lot of the motives and tactics? Absolutely not. I, for one, being in Texas, we all know Texas is just a hard place to be when it comes to animal welfare. I feel the approach sometimes is one size fits all, and that's not the case. Especially when it comes to municipalities. I mean, it's easy enough to be a nonprofit who has contracts, who kind of gets to dictate what they kind of do. We're just a totally different animal. And I think that's where a big portion of where I disagree on some of the tactics and how they presume to do things, because there's a huge piece of us missing while we are wanting to be proactive. At the same time, for me personally and our agency, we are also enforcement. So we can't just do things willy-nilly. We have to be fair across the board, whether people like it or not.
You know, the SPCA shelter in the Boston area, which is exemplary, they're a 94% survival rate, and they won't use the designation no kill. However, they accept major grants from best friends. They work with them. They work within their network because they say what they're doing is great. we're just not going to use the label. And he says, I'm constantly arguing with them about that. However, the good stuff they do is really good. Why can't we think that way?
And I
agree.
That's honestly, that's been our kind of pitch from this program for years. We've had several guests from Best Friends. We have one planned to come on the show in April as well. And that's the conversation is why can't we find a middle ground where that verbiage doesn't need to be part of the conversation anymore? That's where I'm at with it professionally, and I just wonder if they'll get there, or if it's too much tied to their identity that they can't at this point let it go.
Well, it wasn't before 2016. That's
Right.
when they made that. But my question is, you guys are animal professionals. I'm on the outside looking in. What effects are you seeing of that?
Well, can I say this, and I'm going to say this in a way that may sound a little bit personal because it is, and I have some information that leads me to believe that they've had some influence at certain animal welfare conferences to keep people from not speaking because they don't agree with those topics because they're not in line with that, I guess, that way of thinking, I guess is the best way to say it. So their influence financially can play a part because they do sponsor several of these conferences. And I've had people that I've trust tell me they've been in planning meetings that very similar situations have occurred where they use their financial influence to say that they won't sponsor certain things if certain speakers are at their conferences. So there's that. And then I look at it from, let's look at the Paulette Dean example you write up in your article, and someone that we've had on the show and have had some other conversations with her offline. There was essentially a targeted attack on her through not only the media, but going to people's homes, following people in the community back to their houses, making them feel unsafe because Paulette would not get on board with their way. And so we've seen it that way as well.
Yeah, I spoke to her and she was distressed. And it wasn't so much that the local, I guess it was called Danville Does Better, the Best Friends affiliate was harassing them, but they kind of put the word out. And then once things are on the internet, that's when the crazies take over.
Mm-hmm.
So she kind of blamed them, not in a direct way, but saying, look what they turned loose without thinking it through. And they didn't negate it enough. Now, that said, their survival rate is very, very poor. And there are reasons for that. Again, a complicated situation.
And that's,
I don't think
yeah.
she deserved to be vilified and terrified. But again, when I spoke to the Best Friends folks, they said, we didn't do that, and we told people to stop. But then the city manager said, they should have known this was going to happen. So I didn't find a single happy person in that whole scenario.
It was rough to watch. It was really rough to watch. I mean, it's even rough to watch now. And, you know, on my end, Douglas, we are known as the kill shelter in our community, specifically because we are a municipality. There is a nonprofit organization that is literally down the road who operates with the two sister city or the sister city south of us, and then the county that we reside in. But we are known as the kill shelter, and I can't tell you how many times that people come in and say, "Well, you know, is this animal gonna die?" And you know, we're very honest. We're very tactful because obviously, with the way we talk in the industry, might slap some people in the face and not in a good way. But we're very honest and we're very transparent about how we do things at our facility. I think we do great things. We're giving away free sterilization vouchers. We're giving away free microchips to our community. We're giving away free rabies vaccinations. And we're doing great things. Are numbers very high? No. But at the same time, you know, when we have this villainizing thing over our head that our community continues to think, you know, we're the kill shelter, nobody comes to us overall and they say, well, you know, the other facility in town is claiming to be no kill, so we're going to go and help them, when in reality, it needs to be the opposite. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, we're the ones who really need the help on our end. And, you know, it really puts a damper on our staff overall to hear that or to see the comments on social media saying this, that, or the other of things that are not true in the first place. We are transparent about what we have the ability to do and not do. But also on the opposite side, and I'll bring this up probably several times, is the enforcement part, which is very important in a lot of these situations where this terminology kind of hurts.
Well, I have the impression, how many million dogs are running around loose in Houston? They take 3,000 a year, and it's tough. But again, they're doing some good things too. This story took so much time because it kept swinging back and forth about who's the good guys, who's the bad guys, who do I believe. I guess there's a professional named Ed Bach who's out in LA. He's an animal professional with a blog, and he's really smart. And I had a good chat with him. I didn't quote him, but he wrote a really unpleasant blog about this piece, saying it missed all the nuances and it missed the fact that the real problem is upstream, where you should stay and neuter. I kind of thought that was implicit in the whole damn thing.
Yeah, it is. And I will say this, there are people, and I don't know Ed personally, but there are people in the animal welfare industry that anytime they see the name Best Friends, they automatically, it'll just go to the negative, no matter what. Even if you wrote like whether it's them calling it a puff piece or they're automatically inclined to go that way. And that's what I hope people see here. That's not our point here on the show. We're controversial about it because it's a controversial term and topic, but we still support some of the work that they're doing. The one thing, if you said, hey, Daniel, I'm going to do, my next piece will be on whatever your recommendation is this, and we need to find a way to do this because I think it ties into everything, is what has the, what's the word I want to use here? Side effect, if you will, of this whole 90% live release rate versus euthanizing dogs that were fringe adoption candidates because they had behavioral issues. So just like you talked about in the show opening, Douglas, this Chihuahua had a brain tumor, which could maybe indicate why it bit. But have dog bites increased and dog attacks increased over the 2016 to 2026 because the emphasis now is more on let's get the animal out of the shelter instead of euthanizing it because of fringe behavioral issues. Put it with the right owner, or put it with somebody that doesn't have children or children over 10 or doesn't have another dog or doesn't have small animals. Have we seen an increase in public safety? Because where I come from, in though I'm still evolving professionally, but my roots are animal control. And that root of me is always going to be public health and public safety first. And I feel like this 90% live release rate is negligent to public health and public safety. That is the why for me. That is exactly why I'm controversial over the terminology, because we put people's health and safety at risk to make sure we're saving 90%.
I looked into that. I couldn't find a reliable national figure on animal bites. What I did find, whenever there was an animal bite, the coverage around it tended to be hysterical.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really hard to get some good, solid information. It's not like they take in dogs and after a while say, well, let's just let them loose. They do very careful behavioral examination. Now, to speak on behalf of Best Friends, what I saw when I was there, they took in 22 of the pit bulls from Vic, but even the other animals, whether it's dogs or cats or whatever, they spend a long time there, and they go through a lot of exit interviewing, so to speak. And then if somebody wants a pet, they come, they hang out with them. There are local hotels that both can stay overnight with them. They do everything they can to make sure that this animal is safe and acculturated. I don't know if there's never been a dog bite. I don't know if there's been a lot. I don't think a lot. I know there have been cases. I think there was a case somewhere where somebody was killed. And again, that wasn't out of that facility. I don't know if it was because it was released prematurely, or like this poor Chihuahua had a brain tumor. So it would be really nice to have national statistics on the safety issue. but I
Mhm.
haven't found. I don't know if you have.
Mm-mm.
No, but there are some isolated articles in LA County, or no, it was LA City, I believe. An employee was attacked by a dog
Mm-hmm.
that had some history. There are several stories, but
I
that's the
think the
thing
word
is, yeah.
used was isolated. Isolated means, so again, my background is science. I always think, what's the difference between an anecdote and data? If one person gets hurt, that's really important. Okay, is that enough to change national policy? Maybe. Maybe it's the tip of the iceberg. You know, in the early years of the AIDS epidemic, first 2 people had AIDS, and 4 people had AIDS, and then 8 people. And it followed a standard epidemiological curve of an upward curve to say,
I was
we're
just gonna say.
anticipating this. I don't know if that's the case with dog bites. I think somebody ought to look into it, but I'm not
Agreed.
ready to draw a conclusion about that.
No, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. I
I
Yeah.
think, at least for what we see overall, and I agree with Deanne, I think from a public health and safety point, I forgot to mention earlier, not that it really matters, but I do have a background in veterinary public health and epidemiology. So my thoughts are always, what is the worst case scenario? And at least here in Texas, what we see and what I've seen when I started in this industry in 2009, I really felt like we were getting somewhere. Excuse me. We were getting somewhere where we were getting through to the community, having them understand the importance of sterilizing, the importance of rabies vaccinations and things like that. Again, somewhere between there and probably I would say about 2016 is where things kind of changed and this new movement really started to affect the way shelters were doing, what they were tasked to do in their jurisdictions. And one big one that I like to bring up all the time is El Paso. I mean, El Paso had a big partnership with Best Friends at a point, and then they removed that partnership because of the way things were going. Again, it goes back to the fact that I feel a lot of this rhetoric misses that piece of public health and safety. Um, for instance, Ashley, she talked about it, Wisconsin Bishop, she talked about it in the last episode. She had a level 5 bite. And I mean, it was bad. It was really, really bad. But there were talks about, well, do we send this dog off to rescue? That shouldn't be a question, period. I've had staff, just in the last year who got attacked by a dog. I was at the shelter. I was off that day. I was at the shelter in 30 minutes, made the decision that dog was sent off for testing. It shouldn't be a question at all. If these animals are not safe for your staff to handle, these animals should not be let out into the public. And I think to the other point is that what other sanctuaries in the United States have the ability to hold on animals for months and months of time?
I didn't hear you. Say that again.
Yeah. What other sanctuaries for dogs and cats have the ability to hold on a mass amount of animals for months and months on end?
Only those with 6,000 acres to spare.
And hundreds of millions of dollars, right?
Exactly. So, for us to think that, well, shelters are not doing their job in trying to rehabilitate those animals. I have 20 dogs just coming in on a single week to be able to figure out, what can I do with Fluffy because he's going to go kill another dog. How many people are going to be equipped to handle an animal like that other than my staff that's in house who deals with this every day?
Mhm. I think these are really interesting points and the kind of discussion I love, as opposed to writing in, well, that's a puff piece. You need these questions. So I have questions for you. What do you think about this whole notion of community care? I mean, one of the things that impressed me, I hadn't been to a shelter since I was a kid and got, an Irish setter at 10 years old. Uh, this notion of, first of all, a shelter is a welcoming place for people if you can, but the idea of helping people keep their animals. So what we're finding, what I've seen, is during these times people can't afford dog food, so to speak, and shelters around here have been able to give them a grant so they could keep the dog food, keep the dog because the dog is a member of the family. Or there is an issue with the landlord because the landlord said you got one more cat from the last straw, and they negotiated. Or if there's a minor behavioral issue, they take the animal, they say, look, here's how to train it. One of the work I did was with a dog lawyer, and he would get dogs sentenced to rehabilitation training and then testing and going. So I was struck at the non-black and whiteness of some of this. And again, I don't know what it's like in Texas, because part of your problem is you have a good climate. You know, if you're in England, if you're a dog out in the cold, you're not going to make it. And that's why, you know, and we always had this typical snooty New England things of, oh, those Southerners. But the truth is, it's the weather.
Yeah.
As nice as we are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm fascinated by this notion of shelters, not just as prisons, but as sort of part of society, where I'm having a problem, I need help, you're an expert, how can I keep my dog, how can I keep my cat? To what degree are you folks seeing that, what seems to be a new movement, permeate your business?
Yeah, and it's a movement I wholeheartedly hope to see that we can do more for our shelters to be more community-based, community service-based centers where we are able to, one, not only help the quote-unquote true strays, which we all know animals have owners at some point, but the true strays that have nowhere to go, nothing, nowhere to be that. However, in my experience, I can tell you, Douglas, that out of 10 people that call my facility who are claiming to be in a true quote unquote crisis, I would say it's 1 out of 10. Everything else is very much, well, the dog barked once at my kid. I don't want it anymore. I just want to give it up. Or the dog peed inside once. I just want to give it up. For instance, even an adoption. I've had adoptions get returned after 3 hours of taking the pet home because the animal just peed or pooped in the house. It is more often than not, it's people that are not in true crisis who are the ones that are wanting to get rid of animals.
So what kind of screening are you able to do to make sure the person
what a wonderful question.
We ask these types of things. I mean, Douglas, I have had somebody call and say, I have this 14-year-old Pomeranian. I'm moving into a new house and I don't want this dog to ruin my house. So I need to give it to you so that you can rehome it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't there any, again, I'm asking questions as an outsider.
No, absolutely.
Aren't there any foster programs? I know, for example, here, because of bad things that happen, you're not allowed to put that kind of thing in crisis because animal abusers like to go there. But are there any social networks that you're involved in where somebody can say, I do have a Pomeranian?
The problem is, and sorry to cut you off,
prison first? Go ahead.
They're just all full. Everybody is full. That's the problem. And so I wish there was a resource that had the bandwidth, if you will, to be able to handle that. I kind of want to go back just a little bit because I think what's happening currently with this idea of resources as shelters, I think we're foreshadowing. I think we're foreshadowing, but we're foreshadowing 50 years too soon. With all due respect, I do.
Happening, really?
It's happening, but it shouldn't be happening at the pace where spay and neuter should be happening. The primary sandbag, if you will, is affordable access to care. We have such a discrepancy amongst the ability for people to provide care for their animals, whether it's basic needs, exams, or certain types of treatment. But the main contributor, and our friend, our rest in peace to Bob Barker, had been telling us for decades to spay and neuter our pets. And that is the reason that we are in this situation that we are in today. Period. There's no other explanation. And so I feel like we're foreshadowing something instead of focusing on what's the immediate. And there are some great people doing it. We talk about Dr. G on the show all the time, the Rascal Unit. We talk about our friend in Utah. She opened her own spay and neuter clinic. We talk about, like, there are people doing it, but we need organizations that have hundreds of millions of dollars to sponsor essentially scholarships to up and coming veterinarians or vet techs, to offer to lobby to our government to provide some sort of subsidized programs for people to go into communities like Houston, Texas, where they have millions of dogs, and open up these low-cost spay and neuter clinics. That's how we fix this problem. We're not fixing it by saving 90% of the animals. All you're doing is putting something out there that is a good marketing slogan.
Yeah, can I give you a complicated answer?
Absolutely.
First of all, best friends advocates that, as far as I saw. And every creature that comes in, spayed and neutered, and they have spay and neuter clinics. Where I live, spay and neuter clinics, it's kind of like ubiquitous. They're everywhere. Maybe because we're a small, concentrated region. Are there parts of the country where spay and neutering is not kind of assumed? I thought
I don't know that. Yeah, I don't know that it's not. So like here in Texas, all of our animals do have to like if they're in a shelter environment and we're adopting out animals, it is mandatory that they get fixed.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of facilities don't have an in-house veterinarian, so they are banking on. And here's the other issue: they're banking on the adopter to make that appointment in order to get that animal spayed or neutered. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and for me, to make the situation more complicated is we are not holding people accountable. And I think, we need to really start moving towards the idea that taking on an animal is a responsibility. I think we've gotten to a point in our industry where it's like, you don't want that animal? Sure, we'll go ahead and take it and we're going to get it a live outcome. No, people need to be held responsible for taking on an animal. It's not like we don't have resources online. I mean, you can Google search anything these days. Hell, you can put it in Chat GPT if you wanted to, and I'm sure it would come up with things. So it's about not only spay and neuter, but also holding people accountable for the ridiculousness and the excuses. I mean, I've had people even tell me they didn't like the color that the animal turned out to be, so they wanted to give it to us. I mean, that is the type of things that we're seeing. It's very rare. I can think maybe every year we probably have maybe 10 people that are in actual crisis. They're going to MHMR. They have nowhere for their animals to go. Somebody passed away. They live states away. They want to come and get the animal, but they can't. I mean, it's very rare that I come across people that are in true crisis that need to give their animals up.
So is there a movement in your industry of having satellite spay and neuter clinics all over the place? Walk in, get your animal spayed before you bring it home. I mean, wouldn't that be a nice thing?
So I joke about it, but I'm serious. If I won that $1 billion a couple weeks ago, one of the first things I would have done is opened up. It would be called the Price is Right spay and neuter clinic across the country. It would literally be like a Starbucks in the communities that absolutely need it. That's how we get out of this mess. And I just, it's not enough. There are I get it. Trust me, I know plenty of veterinarians that have been veterinarians for the last 10, 15 years, and they still owe $200,000 in student loans. So I get it. They have an overhead. They need to make money. That's what I mean is we need some sort of government assistance to make this more, I would say, yeah.
Good luck getting government assistance for you. I must say, I think his name is Mbach, who wrote to me, saying I missed the nuance. He correctly pointed out this is an upstream problem.
Mm-hmm.
I pointed out, I agree with that. It's an upstream problem. You're saying, the river is flooding, let's build more dams, or I don't know how to put it, but always look upstream. Why is this such a problem now? It was supposed to have been solved in the 70s when spay and neutering became really common. I don't know if people are ignoring it. I don't know if people have more need for animal companionship.
It's vanity, Douglas. It's vanity. People want the French bulldog. People want the Malinois. People want what's another good? Oh, the Labradoodles. It's vanity.
Brought up the next question. As animal professionals, we're just being philosophical now. What is your feeling about having purebred dogs as opposed to mutts?
I'll just
It's a complicated quiz. It's a
no,
complicated answer.
let me jump in real quick. I believe this is my personal view. If you are someone that has a dog that you need to do a job, whether it's you have a farm or you're in law enforcement, or maybe you need a dog for a disability, I believe that dogs bred for certain purposes should still continue to be bred. However, do you really need a golden retriever poodle mix?
That's the question. And the question is, when you breed dogs, you're not sterilizing animals, you're still increasing the population.
Correct. So for vanity purposes, I believe that it's not necessary. For actual, I guess, work-related purposes for that animal, I believe it should be done. That's my personal opinion. Bishop, what do you say?
I the same, for me, I love dogs. I mean, I've always loved dogs as a kid. I was a very sickly child. I wasn't able to have dogs until my adult life. Dogs have always been a part of why I wanted to be in this industry in the first place. I think there's a place for responsible breeding. Absolutely. I think that section of the world, at least microscopically right now, I think is catching on to the fact that, contracts say this or that. You can't breed this animal for whatever purposes, or if it ends up at a shelter, I need to be called, or whatever the case might be. I think it's tough. It's in, like you said earlier, Douglas, and one of the catchphrases that we use all the time, at least in our department, is that there's a lot of gray area in our industry. I am happy to have mutts every single day. I mean, some of the best dogs I've come across in my time in this industry have been mixes of dogs. Or we've also had dogs that are also full bred. I've had greyhounds, I've had Afghan hounds come in, I've had Saint Bernards. The Gambit, Chow Chows, and things like that. For me, that's a tough question. It really is a tough question. Do we want to wipe out all these purebreds, but at the same time, how do we marginalize that population to where they are doing what needs to be done to help us out of this mess? For me, it's complicated. Do we need the Labradoodles of the world? Absolutely not. These vanity breeds, or these, what are they called? There's a term for it. It's just, why are we breeding, and why are we breeding these types of dogs? And then you look at it now, and look at how many French bulldogs are ended up in the shelters right now, because they're a hot mess of a breed.
Hot
I mean, they
mess.
have so many medical issues. It's insane.
Even German Shepherds with a hip displacement.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Douglas, I believe you actually reference it. You don't reference it by name, but I will. In your article, you talk about the history a little bit, and Caroline Earl White, the women's SPCA there in Philadelphia, being the first animal shelter in this country. Additionally, one thing that's not mentioned are the two other major players. One, you brought up indirectly earlier, which is MSPCA Angel, which was founded by George Thorndike Angel. And then we haven't talked about it by name, but the ASPCA, founded by my idol, Henry Berg.
And I did speak with I did speak with them.
Okay, good.
They were just in the middle of something, and they didn't want to be quoted in the story.
Understood. With that being said, those three major players, this is from my research, the books that I've read, etc. The only controversy amongst those three, if there was any, was Caroline Earl White's inability to join her own organization's board because she was a woman. So she said, "Fuck you and your board. I will start my own own shelter and own animal enforcement team." And she got 30 women, and she created what is now known as the Women's SPCA there in Philadelphia, which is the oldest animal shelter. But none of them complained about the other. They weren't like, "Oh, look what MSPCA, or look what George Thorndike Angel's doing in Boston, or look what Henry Berg's." There was none of that. They even had a magazine called Our Dumb Friends, which was an animal publication to educate. Unfortunately, in today's world, maybe I don't know. I don't know the why.
Social media.
Yeah, I
Are you-
think maybe.
What's
I
your
think my
question?
my my
What's
point is,
the complaint?
well, my point is, why can't we all just be together like that group was when animal welfare started, and figure out how to educate the public on humane treatment of animals, how to find ways to get affordable vet care for the community, and then drop all the other labels. But I feel like everybody is just fighting for each dollar, and then whatever that word is, ideology
Ideology.
gets in the way.
Yes.
That's that's all. I just wanted to throw that out there because I really look up to those three. I really look up to Caroline, to
Henry, was he started with animals and then went on to protect children? Isn't that
uh,
the
jo-
order?
uh so yeah, there's a matter of fact, what happened with Henry Berg, a wonderful book that I still need to send to you, Ashley. I'm sorry. It's
Hmm.
called Out of the Darkness: A Story of Mary Ellen Wilson, and it's just a wonderful but horrifying read at the same time. She was subject to years of child abuse, and a wonderful woman named Etta Wheeler came along and got with Henry Berg, and they started the Children's Society of Prevention of Cruelty to Children of New York City in 1874, I believe. And yeah, it started it all. And I just wish we could get that. Like, how come we can't get back to that?
How come the country can't get back to that?
That's another. Hey, that's another episode on Keep It Humane, the
I'll tell you
podcast.
in 5 minutes. It,
Again, and I'll go back, is there's a lot of gray area. There's so many moving pieces in this field that I wish we could tackle head on. But I think the most important is, one, education. What does it mean to have a companion animal? And two, spay and neuter. And with that spay and neuter, why are we rabies vaccinating animals? Things like that, because it's important. As somebody who comes from a border town where things can easily just cross, I mean, it's important to emphasize why these things are in place. Why is it important that we eradicated transmission of dog rabies in the United States? It's important for all of those things, but it's such a gray area, and I feel like everybody's trying to reinvent the wheel when we shouldn't. Take an idea and mold it to whatever happens in your community, I think is the most important thing, which is why I feel so strongly about not only the no-kill movement, but some of the tactics, because again, not everything fits everybody's situation.
Absolutely.
And it just hurts that we're all trying to be fit into this same mold, just for the glory of being considered no kill or getting a, trophy that
A
says,
plaque on the wall.
yeah, I don't know. It's just it gets really demoralizing, and again, I see it every day. The larger facilities here in Texas, in the big Central Triangle, I mean, they get hit every day by people who are just calling them killers, that we enjoy euthanasia, that, I mean, who does? I've been doing this for so long. Who does? It still hurts. I cry. I mean, and if you don't, you need to get out of this industry. But it just amazes me that people think that we enjoy having to make those decisions.
well, yeah, that's the trouble with oversimplistic thinking.
Well,
You know,
Douglas,
every time
we
you say something, I think of the opposite thing too. Some of the people complain, well, best friends is only in it for the money. And they do raise a lot of money, but they're not in it for the money. They care really deep. I just think they're kind of single-minded. We got our way, it's effective, uh, not enough wiggle room. On the other hand, a lot of what they're doing is terrific. A lot of what shelters are doing, it's complicated. And it's so, this is not the only topic I write about. And I keep coming back to today's America. Why can't we just discuss, put our best heads together and figure out what's the best policy and how do we move forward for that? And we know there's regional differences. All right, but how do we, you're saying the same thing. And
Yeah,
it's frustrating.
it is.
we're a reflection of the universe, which is a chaotic place where there's hot magma floating around in balls and comets and things like that. So maybe we just reflect that, and that's why we're so.
Let me push back. Let's say, why don't we stand against that?
I like that.
why don't we be not that and try to?
Well, we're trying to be inclusive here on Keep It Humane, the podcast. We really do appreciate a lot of the work that they're doing. We just ask that they maybe let off of those slogans a little bit.
Cool. You, this has been a really, really fulfilling discussion.
And we appreciate you, Douglas. If you ever have anything that you want to share with the show, if you ever would like to come back on, if you write something in the animal or humane world and want to share it with us, we'd love to have you. I want our visitors to know to check out your website, Douglas Starr, that's star with 2Rs.com, douglasstarr.com. Please check that out. And we really appreciate you, Douglas, for taking the time today.
Me too. You guys are great. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks again for tuning in. Let's continue to help people.
Help animals.
And keep it humane.